The altimeter reads 14,000 feet. The clouds below you are thick enough to hide a war. And right now, they're hiding you. The radio has been silent for 40 minutes. Not broken, silent. Because no one is supposed to know you're here. The cargo in the back weighs exactly what they told you it would. You didn't ask what it was. That was the first rule. The second rule, land only when the lights on the runway blink twice. The third rule, if they blink 3 times, you don't land. You climb, you disappear. You never speak of this flight. The lights below are starting to appear through the cloud. You count. 1, 2. You exhale. Then the third light blinks. Imagine you are that pilot, not a criminal, not a soldier, a man who spent 12 years learning to read the sky, a man who made one decision, just one, that put him in a cockpit above a runway that doesn't exist on any map. This is how it started, and somewhere in this story, there is a man who already knew how it would end. He was in the hangar the first day you arrived. You walked past him. Everyone did. You are 31 years old and you fly cargo planes for a living. Not the kind with flight attendants and overhead compartments, the kind with corrugated floors and tie-down straps and manifests that no one reads carefully. You fly for a mid-sized logistics company out of a secondary airport in a city most people fly over, not to. You make $62,000 a year. You have 412 hours of instrument flying. You have a certificate that says you are qualified to fly in conditions where the sky and the ground look the same. You are good at this. Genuinely, technically, undeniably good. That's the problem. Being good at something no one is willing to pay for is its own kind of trap. You have a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment 40 minutes from the airport. You drive a 2009 pickup truck that smells like aviation fuel and old coffee. You have a logbook with more hours than most pilots your age and a bank account that doesn't reflect it. Your father was an Air Force mechanic. He spent 30 years around engines he never got to fly. He told you once, get in the cockpit or get out of aviation. There is no dignity in being close to the thing you love without being the one who controls it. You chose the cockpit. He was proud of that. He died before the debt from your flight training was paid off. You are not a man who complains. You do not have a dramatic backstory. You are simply a man with a specific skill, a specific debt, and a specific feeling that the life you built is slightly too small for the life you imagined. That feeling is the door. You just don't know it yet. It starts at the hangar, not with a man in a suit, not with a phone call from a number you don't recognize. It starts with a conversation about weather. A man named Castillo finds you doing a pre-flight check on a King Air that's supposed to carry machine parts to a distribution center 3 states away. He's wearing a polo shirt and clean shoes. He looks like a regional sales manager. He probably dresses that way on purpose. He asks you about the crosswind forecast. You tell him. He nods like he understood it, which he didn't. Then he says, "Do you ever fly private charters?" You say, "Sometimes. Depends on the route." He says, "What if the route was flexible?" He lets that sit for a moment. Then he says, "I represent clients who need discrete transport. Agricultural goods. Time sensitive. They pay well because they value reliability and silence. The pilots who work with us don't ask what's in the hold. They just fly." The word silence does something to the conversation. It changes the weight of it. You don't say yes. You don't say no. You say, "How well is well?" He pulls out a card. No name, just a number. He says, "Call it if you're interested. Don't call it if you're not. No pressure either way." He walks away. You look at the card for a long moment. Then you look up. Across the hangar, an old mechanic in a grey coverall is wiping down a turbine housing with a red rag. He's been there since you arrived. He doesn't look up, but you will remember him later. You will remember that he was there. You will remember the red rag. You put the card in your chest pocket. You tell yourself you won't call. You call 3 days later. The first flight is almost boring. A Cessna Caravan, single engine, night departure from a private strip 2 hours from the city. The cargo is sealed in 3 aluminum cases. You don't touch them. A man loads them with gloves on and pats the fuselage twice when he's done, the way someone pats a horse before a race. The flight plan filed with the authority shows a different destination than where you actually go. You land on a strip carved into a plateau that doesn't appear on any commercial navigation chart. 3 men with flashlights meet you. They unload in 4 minutes. They hand you an envelope. You open it in the cockpit after they walk away. $11,000 in cash. For 3 hours and 40 minutes of flying, you sit with that for a moment. $11,000. You make that in 2.5 months of cargo runs. The flight back is empty and smooth. You climb to altitude and the stars are sharp and close, and the engine hums with the mechanical contentment of a thing doing exactly what it was built to do. You feel it too. Not pride, not exactly. Something older than pride. The feeling of being useful in a way that is proportional to your ability. The feeling that finally someone is paying you what the skill is worth. You land before dawn. You park the plane. You drive home with the envelope in the glove compartment. You pay 4 months of debt in a single wire transfer. Your bank sends you an automated congratulations message. You laugh at that for longer than you should. Somewhere in a city you've never been to, a man reads a short report. It says the pilot performed well. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He's the one. The second flight is bigger. The third is international. By the 6th, you have a nickname. They call you El Reloj, the clock, because you are never late and never early. You hit your windows with the precision of a man who understands that in this business, 60 seconds of deviation can mean the difference between an empty runway and a very different kind of reception. Castillo introduces you to the operation slowly, the way a doctor introduces a patient to a powerful drug, a little more each time, enough to function, not enough to feel the full weight of what you're carrying. By month 4, you understand the architecture. There are 6 pilots in rotation. You never meet them. You communicate through Castillo and through a dispatcher who goes by a name that isn't his name. The routes change every 3 weeks. The airstrips are maintained by local contractors who are paid in cash and instructed to forget. The loads vary. Sometimes sealed cases, sometimes pallets, sometimes passengers who don't speak and don't make eye contact and leave the aircraft without saying a word. You don't ask about the passengers. That is also a rule. The money is now real. Not just envelope money. Wire transfers into a shell account that a man in Panama manages on your behalf. You have a second phone. You have a protocol for communications that would have seemed paranoid a year ago and now seems obvious. You move out of the apartment. You buy a house, modest, deliberate, nothing that attracts attention, and pay cash for the down payment through a holding company that lists you as a consultant for an agricultural firm. You are good at this. That still feels true. But what you are good at has changed. You used to be good at flying. Now you are good at disappearing. There is a difference. You are beginning to understand it. The night the weight arrives, you are on a return leg from a strip in the mountains. The flight is smooth. The cargo is light. You are 2 hours from home. And then the radio crackles. It is not the dispatcher. It is not a frequency you have on file. It is a voice you don't recognize, calm and flat, speaking on a channel that should be empty. El Reloj, change course, bearing 270, descend to 8,000. There is a problem at the strip. You don't respond. The protocol is clear. If you receive an unscheduled contact, you do not confirm. You assess. But the voice continues. The strip has been compromised. There are vehicles on the runway. If you land, you will not leave. Change course now. You look at your instruments. You look at the fuel. You look at the chart on your knee. Bearing 270 takes you to a secondary location you were shown during your second month, a contingency strip never used, reserved for exactly this. You bank left. You never find out if the information was accurate. You never find out who the voice was. You land at the secondary strip at 2:47 in the morning, and 2 men you've never seen take the cargo and hand you fuel and wave you off without explanation. You fly home in the dark. And for the first time since this started, you understand that you are inside something that has contingencies for your death, that there are people who have already thought about what happens when you don't come back, that your life, from the perspective of the operation, is a variable, managed, useful, replaceable. The voice on the radio. You never traced it. You told yourself it was one of Castillo's people. But Castillo didn't know about the strip being compromised. No one did. The information came from somewhere else. You develop a habit. Every morning before a flight, you sit in the cockpit for 5 minutes before starting the engine, just sitting, listening to the silence. Your father used to do this. You thought it was superstition. Now you understand it was math. He was calculating whether the day was worth the risk. Some mornings, the math is harder than others. The cargo manifest for Flight 31 says, medical supplies, 6 cases, sealed, 200 kilos total. You have flown medical supplies before. You know what 200 kilos of medical supplies feels like in a fuselage. It shifts differently. It settles differently. Weight distribution tells you things the manifest doesn't. This doesn't feel like medical supplies. You stand at the cargo door for a long moment. The cases are locked with combination latches. You don't have the combinations. That's also a rule. You don't open the cargo. But one of the cases has a small crack along the seal. Not broken, just slightly misaligned from loading. And through that misalignment, in the beam of your flashlight, you can see the edge of a label, a pharmaceutical label, but not the kind that goes to hospitals. You have done enough flights to know exactly what you are looking at. You close the cargo door. You do the pre-flight check. You file the flight plan. You start the engine. And then you sit there. The engine is running. The runway is clear. The weather is perfect. All you have to do is release the brakes. You think about your father, about the apartment you left, about the debt you paid, about the house with the modest facade and the cash down payment, about the version of yourself that existed before the first envelope. You think about the voice on the radio that saved your life, or that knew your life needed saving, which is a different thing. You think about the word silence and the way Castillo used it in the hangar, and the way it has grown from a professional requirement into a permanent condition. You release the brakes. The plane rolls forward. The runway lights blur past. You lift off. That moment. Not the first flight, not the first envelope. That moment is when you became something different. You knew what you were carrying, and you carried it anyway. Month 18. You land Flight 47 at a strip in the lowlands that you've used 4 times before. The offload team is late. You wait in the cockpit for 22 minutes, engine off, listening to insects and the distant sound of a generator. When the team arrives, there are more of them than usual, and they're not moving the cargo. They're surrounding the aircraft. Castillo is not on the phone. The dispatcher is not responding. The secondary contact protocol produces nothing. A man climbs the boarding stairs. He's not from the offload team. He's wearing clean clothes. He has a folder. He sits in the co-pilot seat without asking permission. He opens the folder. Inside, your name, your flight logs, the real ones, not the official ones, photographs of every airstrip you've used, tail numbers, dates, times. He looks at you the way someone looks at an interesting problem. You're not in trouble, he says. Castillo is. You've been working for a man who has been skimming from 3 separate organizations simultaneously. That kind of creativity has consequences. We are one of the consequences. He closes the folder. We need a pilot, not for cargo, for a single flight. The destination is specific. The timing is precise. After that, you are finished. You will receive enough money to disappear completely, and we will have no further interest in you. He pauses. Alternatively, when investigators eventually go through Castillo's records, your name is in every logbook. That conversation ends differently. You look at the folder, at your own name, at 18 months of evidence assembled by people who were watching you long before this conversation. You ask, how long have you known about me? The man almost smiles. Since before the first flight, he says. We needed someone reliable. Castillo found you. We approved you. The world rearranges itself around that sentence. You were not recruited. You were selected. The first flight was not an opportunity. It was an audition. Every route, every strip, every flight you made in the dark. They were watching, evaluating, building toward this moment. You were never driving yourself. You were cargo. The final flight takes 4 hours and 11 minutes. You don't know what the plane is carrying. You don't know who is meeting it at the other end. You climb to altitude in the dark and you follow the coordinates, and you find the strip by the lights, and you land, and you walk away from the aircraft without looking back. A car is waiting. A bag is in the back seat. You don't open it until you are 200 miles from the strip. Inside, a passport, a new name, an account number in a bank in a country you visited once as a tourist, and a handwritten note with 4 words. You flew well. Disappear. No signature. You drive through the night. The sun comes up over a flat landscape you don't recognize. You stop at a gas station and you sit at a picnic table outside, and you drink bad coffee and you look at the passport with your new name. You think about the man in the folder, about Castillo, about 18 months of flights in aircraft that left no official record. You think about the voice on the radio that warned you about the compromised strip. You think about Castillo finding you at the hangar, about the conversation that seemed casual, about the card with no name. And then you think about something you barely registered at the time. When Castillo left that day, he walked toward the east exit. But when you looked up a moment later, he was gone. And the old mechanic, the one in the grey coverall with the red rag, was still there, still working, still not looking at you. You saw him again on the day of your 3rd flight. Different hangar, different airport, same coverall, same rag. You didn't think anything of it. And on the morning of Flight 31, the flight with the pharmaceutical cargo, the flight where you sat with your hand on the brake and made the choice that changed what you were, you saw him again, across the tarmac, working on a fuel coupling at the edge of the service apron, 3 airports, 18 months apart. Same man, same coverall, same red rag. You never knew his name, but he was there on the first day. He was there on the day of the first choice. He was there when everything you built began to disappear. And now, sitting at this picnic table with a new passport and a name that isn't yours, you understand something with the quiet certainty of a man who has spent 18 months learning to read systems. Castillo didn't find you. Someone found you first. Someone watched you long enough to know you were reliable, skilled, desperate in the quiet way that ambitious people are desperate. Someone decided that you were the right instrument for a specific purpose. Someone approved you. And somewhere in a city you'll never visit, in a room you'll never see, an old man in a grey coverall is putting down a red rag and reading a short report that says, "The pilot performed. He's gone. No trace." He closes the report. He picks up a different file. There is someone else in a hangar somewhere, someone good at something the world isn't paying for. Someone with a specific skill and a specific debt and a specific feeling that the life they built is slightly too small for the life they imagined. The old man reads the file. He doesn't change the world. He only chooses who will. You finish the coffee. You get back in the car. You drive toward a name that isn't yours. The sky is enormous and perfectly clear. The best flying weather you've ever seen. You will never fly again. I don't change the world. I only choose who will.